Prepare yourselves for a rare sports analogy coming from me. Not being a sports aficionado, I don't usually dare such a thing. But today's readings from the second book of Kings and from the Gospel of John might well be biblical examples of Hail Mary passes. To those who are trying to decide whether to go off and Google Hail Mary pass, I can relate. So I'll tell you, it's a football slang, and it was coined in the 1930s at Notre Dame University, referring to a play that would take a miracle to succeed. Of course, a school named after Our Lady would call a miraculous play a Hail Mary, right? In today's gospel, Jesus, the son of Mary, right, pulls off a Hail Mary pass, as does the prophet Elisha in the second book of Kings. Stories of miraculous abundance out of scarcity are, well, abundant in the scriptures. Even just this story of the multiplication of the loaves and fishes appears 6 times in the 4 Gospels. The wedding at Cana is a story about scarcity of wine becoming an abundance of wine. There's a story of the widow at Zarephath, which tells of the time when a widow and her son had almost no food left because of drought and famine, and the prophet Elijah asked her to share her tiny supply, which she did. And the result was that the tiny supply lasted until rain broke the drought. Then there was the story of the manna in the desert, when food was so scarce that the Israelites even yearned to return to slavery rather than starve. But God's Hail Mary pass was to send bread and quail from heaven. And then when Jesus instructed the apostles to take nothing but their sandals and a cloak when they went out to the people, that alludes to a promise that their needs would be provided somehow, abundance out of scarcity. Like so many of these stories, both of today's miracles have a little starter dough, to use a baking analogy. For example, when the man brings Elisha 12 loaves baked from the first ripe corn, it says, that first ripe corn refers to his best, his first product of his labors. It's a sacred offering he's making. So the miracle begins with this act of abundant generosity, the first fruits of his labor. One might imagine him saying, this isn't enough, but it's my very best. And then when Jesus asks the apostles to feed the 5,000 families, that miracle too has some starter dough, right? I imagine the scene when Andrew says, there's a child here who has 5 loaves and 2 fish. And I just picture Andrew pointing to this little child who's wide-eyed and who presumably has a mother standing right there, right? Still perhaps her body aching from the work of making those 5 loaves and catching those 2 fish, which she expected to use to feed her own family. So the miracle begins with this act of human generosity. The child and the mother perhaps say, well, this little bit, it isn't enough, but it's all that I have. It's the best that I have. And God multiplies it into an abundance. I can't help but notice that the apostles' first instinct was to disperse the gathered community so that they're no longer a community gathered, right? So that each family would fend for themselves. But God in Jesus has a different plan to celebrate communal abundance and thus feed everyone, not those with the just means, but every single person. You may have heard that some speculate that initial act of generosity, right, the 5 loaves or the bread in Elisha, that initial act of generosity ignited the hearts of others to reach into their satchels and share their own packed lunches. And then there are others who believe that it's this sudden miraculous appearance of food. In my heart and mind, though, it doesn't matter which interpretation is true. Whether the miracle is enacted by Christ or by the body of Christ, it is no less a godsend. It is a true Hail Mary pass. Not unlike this community of faith, who has gathered for 52 years and counting in so many different locations, with so many different presiders, so many members, with faith and trust and lots of starter dough. We are here because of many Hail Mary passes. And also, dare I say, it reminds me of our prayers last Sunday when we asked for provision for our country, that God would provide. And on that very day, a groundswell of support, both monetary and political, arose from millions of people to support a new and different candidate. May this starter dough of hope multiply into an abundance. Oh, Hail Mary, so full of grace. God indeed is with thee and us. Blessed art thou.